Okay, so aloha ho kako. Just really excited to have all of you with us tonight. And I'm gonna invite my friends to come up to the front here. And tonight our presentation is called Daughters of Mau, Contemporary Women Voyagers. And just really excited to have them all together and to be able to share their mo'olelo. And just really excited and to have them here in Maʻili. Because I think we all come from different parts of the Pai'aina, but always happy to be together and to come together and to be on a waʻa together. Although I always have to make the saying that I am not the waʻa crew, I am the Aina crew to support the waʻa crew. And I know I get my two other Aina kokua sisters here. We're the Aina crew, they're the waʻa crew. But we can take care of plenty keiki and feed them really well and do all of that. But just really happy to have Kēhau Enos, Ānuenue Punua, Kainani Kahaunaele, and Bonnie Kahapeʻa with us. And I'm going to introduce him too because this is his first event he's helping Auntie Malia with. This is my nephew Kyle. So he's the lay person. He's just moving to Kauai to be with Auntie Malia and Uncle Victor from Dublin, California, and going to Kauai Community College. So putting him to work.
Yawa anui, yawa aki aloha, yawa a pelele ua lele mamala, amanu o kai, I iwi pole na akau ka hoku, akau I kamalama a pai kula. Yawa anui, yawa aki aloha, yawa a pelele ua lele mamala. Amanu o kai, I iwi pole na akau ka hoku, akau I kamalama a pai kula. Yawa anui, yawa aki aloha, yawa a pelele ua lele mamala. Amanu o kai, I iwi pole na akau ka hoku. Akau I kamalama a pai kula.
Yeah, so you each get your own mic.
Not this time.
Yeah, and we'll get the slideshow going because we have 103 pictures to share. But don't get too distracted because the mo'olelo is just as ono over here.
Velina me ke aloha ya ka koa pau. O wau ke Kainani Enos, no he ea ko olau poko o ahu mai au.
Aloha mai kako, o wau no o Bonnie Kahapeʻa Tanner, no kani ohe mai au.
Aloha no kako, o wau o Kainani Kahaunaele, no Anahola Kauai.
Aloha mai kako, o wau o Ānuenue Punua, no kani ohe mai au. Aloha.
Okay, aloha.
Captain.
It's so fabulous to be here.
We're kind of awkward over there.
I don't know how to do this.
I don't think we've done it like this. Anyway, we're very excited. A little bit nervous. But mahalo nui everyone for having us here out on this side, this beautiful side of the island. So we're going to share with you folks tonight a little bit about our experiences on the waʻa Makalii and becoming the Daughters of Mau. So I'm going to kind of set this context a little bit. So kind of going back to the early 70s, there was a lot of course, we know a lot of struggle in our communities, in the Hawaiian community, and there was groups of people that were starting to stand up and take notice of what was happening in our culture and in our communities, and they started to stand up. There were many movements at the time. Kaho'olawe is certainly one of them. And of course, the starting of the Hokulea is a big one. And for us, that's where we're coming from. So in the early 70s, 3 men got together, Herb Kane, Ben Finney, and Tommy Holmes, and they wanted to build a canoe, Hokulea. And the point of that was to prove that the Hawaiians had and Polynesians had the ability, the intellect, and the skills, and the natural resources to navigate across the oceans and make purposeful voyages. Because at the time, in the scholarly academic world, there was the notion that we drifted here accidentally, that we were victims of the storm.
Hello.
So we knew that was not correct, because if you look at any of our mo'olelo, any of our stories in our oli, you know that that's not true. And so that's how the start of Hokulea came to be. And in 1975, they did build that canoe, and it was launched at Kualoa Hakipu'u. I think it was on March 8th, 1975. And then they took the canoe around, and they had to really learn how to sail, like they were small children again. And these people had to just learn from the beginning how to sail, the skills. And then even though they learned to sail the canoe, they had one big problem. Does anybody know what that was, the challenge? No what? No navigators. The knowledge had been completely lost. And so they searched throughout Polynesia to try and find a navigator, and no one at that time came forward to say that they had the skills to do it. And so they had to keep searching, and they went west, and eventually they found a man in his, I think he was in his 30s, 40s at the time, and he eventually came, and his name was Pius Piailug. And he became the eyes of the canoe, he became the navigator, and eventually he became our father. So in 1976, he did sail, and he navigated the canoe Hokulea down to Tahiti. And from that, now we've known, where did Hokulea just go? Around the world, which is a really amazing accomplishment for all of us to have that experience. And so, you know, the Hokulea is one canoe, and now we have many across Polynesia and even here in our own Pai'aina. And so because the canoe was based here on Oahu, but crew members came from all around the different islands, and there were 2 crew members in particular, Clay Bertelman and Shorty Bertelman, 2 cowboys from Waimea, Hawaii. And, you know, they were coming up here, they had their families back in Waimea, they would leave their ohana, and they would come to Oahu to train, and eventually they decided that they needed to have their own canoe to have for their own community. And that was the beginning of the canoe Makalii. It was a canoe built by cowboys. It was built in Waimea in the old Parker Ranch Quonset hut, and then eventually taken down to Kauai High, and was launched in 1995 and made her first voyage to Tahiti shortly thereafter she was launched. And so that kind of brings us up to our experiences collectively as, well, now we've all become extremely great friends, and now our keiki get to be a part of it as well. Good?
So we all arrived at Makalii in different times, the 4 of us. We all sailed together on the voyage that took Mau home. But we all arrived at the canoe at different times, so we're just going to do a quick spin around of how we got there, because one of the common questions is, you know, how do we become involved? For me, this person right here, at the time, I was a kahu, I was the director of Punana Leo Ko'olauloa, and every year the Punana Leo would have a yearly gathering, and it would be on a different island, and that year in particular, it was 1998, the summer, we actually met in Waimea, and one of our huaka'i was to go to Makalii. And so she was already a part of Makalii. I had never met Makalii, the canoe, but that day I met Makalii, changed my life. I stepped on board and I was just like grinning ear to ear, and just the magic of the canoe got me, and I was hooked. So, but it started because she was also a director at the time, and it was just an invitation. Hey, what are you doing next weekend? It was as simple as that. Okay, I'll go. Yeah, Kauai High.
Okay. After I left Kauai, I moved to Hilo to go to Kulanui to study Olelo Hawaii over there. And the previous summer, Kahapeʻa and I met, and we did South Pacific student exchange through the community colleges. So that's how I met Kahapeʻa. And so when I arrived in Hilo, I had a friend already. And every time we would get together at her house, and at the time she had a roommate whose name was Kainani Kahaunaele. And we were all sitting at the dinner table, and Kainani comes over and she said, "Oh, Keola Hanoa is coming over, and I think we're going to go to Tahiti with Makalii, the canoe. We're going to go with Hale Makua as one of his haumana. You want to go?" I said, "Yeah." She had asked Kahapeʻa too, but Kahapeʻa already had a trip planned at that time. And so I did go. And so the invitation to accompany, not as a crew member, but as one of the students of the spiritual advisors of the waʻa, Hale Makua, I sat on his side to just try to absorb. Because when you would work with Hale Makua, it was just all about timing. And so I was fortunate to go on that trip down to Tahiti, but also to the Makalii launching. And so when Makalii was launched into the water, that is the first time I actually saw the waʻa and the family, and a lot of my college friends were like, "What you guys doing down here?" And I was like, "Girl, you late. You should have been coming earlier." But anyway, I said, "I see you guys down in Tahiti too." And so anyway, I was part of the Makalii ohana that went down to Tahiti for the inaugural voyage as the land crew. And I never went on board. I never sailed because that wasn't the time. And so when we all came back to Hawaii, that's when we got to go down to Kailua Kona Pier, and that was the first time that I got to jump on board. But that all it takes is one invitation, and it's always a genuine invitation to come on board, and that is the actual time to do it. And no say, "Oh, no." You say, "Okay," and you go, because the invitation may not ever come again, especially from the captain. So just like Kēhau and these two other wonderful ladies, once we got on, we never got off till today.
Wow. For me, similar story. Actually, I graduated from Kamehameha Kapalama in 1994. And my best friend was Faylene Paishan, and here's her ohana over here, so aloha, when I say aloha. And she, actually, her and a bunch of my best friends all went to school in Hilo. They all went to UH Hilo, and I was the only one, because I had to stay home. I went to Manoa. And I think the first semester, I would go fly up and say aloha and hang out with them. And then all of a sudden I was hearing, Faye, she don't go class. I said, "Why? What happened?" "She's not going to class. She's building a canoe. She went to Wai'anae and she's helping her uncle to build this canoe." I'm like, "What? Building a canoe?" And so for a long time, I hadn't heard from her. We kind of would, at that time, no more texting, no more, not even email was really a big thing, right? So it was kind of through the grapevine that you would find out what was happening. And so 95 happened, and another friend of mine, Nia Milika'a, who lives out here in Nanakuli, she was another one that went to college and then went on the canoe, and we lost touch for a long time. Then they went on their voyage. That's how I heard about Kainani. And about a year later, we had seen each other, Mahina and I, but a year later in 96, she had to come home and take care of her grandma to Oahu. And all I could hear was, you gotta come to Hawaii. You gotta come to Hawaii, because the canoe is calling you. Okay, the canoe is calling me. Just come on, come on. So I went, and it was spring break of 1996. The canoe had come home, and it was the first time I saw Nia in almost a year and a half, I think, my other friend. I hadn't seen her forever. And we, Uncle Chad picked us up, Chad and Pomai picked us up and brought us straight to Kauai. And they said, there she is. And it was the beginning of our, it was like the students. So they would train students around the island in different schools, from Kalapana all the way down to Ka'u, Honoka'a, all these different high schools had a little sailing program or a program that they were going into their classes and teaching. And the spring break was like their crew training. It was the first year in 96, and they all came and they all brought these kids from all over, Hilo, Honoka'a, Honawaina. And so I show up and I meet Uncle Clay brought him in. Now he's not, you see him, he's just kind of rough looking guy, tank top, no slippers, shorts, and he's on the pier and he's giving commands and telling everybody what to do. And I'm just standing there like, oh, okay. And then Faye's on the side, Mahina, everybody knows her as Mahina now. Mahina goes, shh, just wait. Are you gonna go? I'm like, are you gonna go on the canoe? What am I gonna do if you go? I don't know these people. She's like, no worry. And all of a sudden she goes, Uncle, this is my friend. This is my friend Leanne, because that's my other name, Leanne. My friend Leanne. She's from Oahu. Right. And then he counted all the crew, and he made sure that there was enough crew on, as well as the students, because the students, this is their chance. They study to plot, they do all the things that are needed to sail this canoe, because the weeks after, they actually do sail down the coast, all the way down to South Point, and it's them. They are the navigators, they are the captains, and they're trained to do that. And then he goes, okay, you, pointing at me, okay, go, right there. You see the paddle, you grab them. And that was my introduction to Makalii. And then I became a crew member. Like, that's how you become a crew member, because you're supposed to know all of a sudden. And then a week later, I go back. I had to go back to school. I was in college at Manoa. So I fly back, and he goes, what you doing this summer? I don't know, Uncle. I said, you better come back, because we might have something for you. So I came back after I was done with my semester. And we actually went up for one of his daughters had graduated, Kekoho, and they were building this halepili, this halau waʻa, down in Ka'upulehu. And he said, I get one job for you. If you want it, you can have it. Okay. It was picking pili every single day, going up to Mauna Kea, up to Waikiki, from like 5 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, picking pili, and we lashed this halau waʻa down at Ka'upulehu, and it was about 4 months that it took, the completion of it, and that was my job. And as that, also, I became the crew member that had to teach everybody about the stars, and talk about hands-on training, because that's kind of how my immersion happened, because if you didn't know, you better find out quick. And that's how I got introduced to Makalii. So 96, and now it's 2017, and we're still, we might not be there as often, but we are definitely a part of the crew, and that's my introduction.
Okay, so we met in this student exchange program down in South Pacific, like Kainani had shared, and what happens in Kona on Labor Day weekend? Anybody know? Any paddlers in the house? What happens Labor Day weekend? Lili'u race. Party. So we was living in Hilo. Or maybe I already moved home. I graduated college, I moved home. So I was already back on Oahu. But I flew back to hang out in Kona for the weekend. So Kainani and I, not to paddle, no, we wasn't paddling already by that point. So jump in Kainani's car in Hilo, drive all the way out to Kona, get one hotel room. Okay, yeah, we're gonna go hang out, party with all the paddlers. And so we get to Kona, and Kainani's like, oh, I think Makalii is down on the pier. And I'm like, ooh, for real? Oh, we go check them out. So we go down there, we check them out. Oh, yeah, okay, they're there. Then the next day, we go down again, and there's crew members on board, you know, and they're just kind of hanging out, but everyone looks like super cool. And I'm like, whoa, I want to go check that out. So we're on the pier, and I'm like, Kainani, can we go on? She's like, no, that's only for the crew. And I was like, oh, okay, that's all right. And so we're waiting, talking story with whoever's on the pier. And I go, oh, I really want to get on there. And she's like, oh, you got to go talk to those guys over there. And she pointed at Chad Paishan and Clay Bertelman. And I looked down the pier and I go, oh no, not gonna talk to them. I was like, that's not gonna happen. They look super rough, you know? And I was like, no, I'm scared. I'm not gonna ask them. So we must have stood there for at least an hour or two, you know, in the hot Kona sun, just watching these guys on the canoe. And I'm just like, oh man, I really wanna get on there. And eventually, they walked up to me and they said, what, you let go on? And I said, yeah. And they said, go. And I was like, okay. So we ended up spending the whole rest of the day sitting on the canoe, just talking story with everybody. And I think at the end of the day, they said, well, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was like, partying? I never say that, but that's what I was thinking. Like, tomorrow's the big party, yeah. And then they're like, oh, come back in the morning. We're going to Kealakekua. And I was like, oh yeah, we went to the hotel room, packed our bags, and that was it. We got on the canoe, and same thing, sailed to Kealakekua, and really have never gotten off the canoe since. And that was in 1995, so. That's the stories.
So in 1999, Kahapeʻa introduced Piailug, the navigator that first sailed Hokulea to Tahiti. In 1999, there was a voyage called Mau, sailing the master home. And that voyage was the one that we all got to participate on. That really was, the purpose of that voyage was to honor Mau home in his own homeland. For all of those decades he had been coming to Hawaii and all of Polynesia at that point. He had spent so much of his life away from his home, teaching all of us, basically, and all of the people who now can sail with non-instrument navigation and wayfinding today. It really goes back to Mau and his selflessness. So we sailed Mau home to his island, his atoll, really, of Satawal in 1999, and we left on February 10th. We left Ka'upulehu on Hawaii Island. We left at sunset. Sailed right towards the sun all the way down, pretty much downwind all the way heading towards the sun. We landed first landfall in Marshall Islands in Majuro, and then we made our way through the Federated States of Micronesia, visited islands like Chuuk, and what's the one island that we really like? Kosrae. We only got to stay there one night, but it was beautiful. Pohnpei, until we met his island of Satawal. Satawal is an atoll. The tallest thing on that island was the coconut trees. Very, very small. You could throw a football from one side to the other, the width of the other side. But very, very clean, back in time for us, I think. But we spent our time there, and then we made our way through Guam and Saipan. And it took about 3 months of total sailing time, and as well as the time that we spent on land. But we were gone for about 3 months, and we came back in May, and we flew home because of the season, the time of year. But through that experience with Mau, and all of the training up to that point, as well as, like everyone shared, we all entered the canoe, we all met the canoe at different times in our life, different years, and different ways and different paths that led us there. But the canoe called to us and we answered the call, and we really never hung up the phone. So that experience, we started thinking about, well, what do we want to share tonight? Because there's so much we can share, and there's so much that we feel that I think if we start talking too much, we'll probably just all start crying and not be able to speak at all. I think that's true. But so we started thinking, what are some things that Mao would say? What are some quotes that Mao would say that have resonated with us, that we've carried, or things that we keep in our mind or in our hearts that kind of help guide us? So we'll all be going to share different quotes, and we're going to try and weave that into how do we apply it personally, because we're all different. We're same but different in the things that we do in our lives now. But for all of us, we're all mothers now. We're all like almost 20 years later. We were all in our 20s when we sailed. We're all, 18 years later. All of us have keiki. All of us have full-time careers and kuleana. So anybody want to start?
Well, I thought it was toward the end.
So, and kind of tagging onto Kehau's thought was when we went down there, one of his people didn't believe what he did was true. He didn't believe that he had actually, that there was this Hokulea. And many of his own people kind of, they made fun of him. They said, yeah, you made this canoe. And so that was his wish. His wish really was for Hokulea 1 to come down. And Hokulea was also at the same time planning for Rapa Nui. But his health wasn't well. He would actually fly here rapidly to do a lot of medical things. So that's why we knew, and our captain was adamant too, we need to take him home. We need to at least be able, so he could sail home. And that's how Makalii went. And as we were talking, one of the quotes that kept on coming back to me was in 75, 76, and he came down to Hawaii to train. They brought Uncle Shorty, brought him in, his first student, and then Nainoa to him as being his next students to train here in Hawaii. And he told them, you are too old. Yeah, bring me your sons. You are too old. And they must have been, in their 20s and 30s. And that quote really resonates for me in a lot of what I do. I'm an early childhood educator. I teach preschool, Kamehameha Preschool in He'eia. This is a beautiful site. I love this site here. But in He'eia, and I have the opportunity to teach kids that are just like me. I grew up in that community. I know that community inside and out, and it's really an honor. And I know not everyone has that honor. But what I see, because I didn't teach there before, I went around, I taught some, did other things, I've been here and there, and is that, you set the foundation at 3 years old, and you make sure and you help their families to become that strong foundation too. Yeah, they're gonna do anything. And they're gonna be strong advocates for our community. So recently I started a nonprofit, and it's so funny, we're here in Ma'ili, and it's named Ma'ili Kukahi, Aina Momona Academy. And it's a nonprofit really to be a moku-driven type of vision, so that everybody here, you can train your own. The Ma'ili Kukahi, and I think of Mao, they had the same vision. It was about that. He was a ali'i that took the keiki, and he put them with the best of the best in his community so that they would train to be the next. And I had a kuleana, and they weren't, not even 5, 5 years old seems kind of old already. So we've been having a summer program on our side in Kaneohe for the last 3 years, and it was, the last 3 years has been fully funded by us, by our families, and it was kind of out of myself and Kahapeʻa and a number of our families that were, what are you gonna do with your kids this summer? What are you gonna do? I said, I don't know. And rather than paying someone else, let's pay our friends, let's pay each other, let's fund our own program. And it's been really awesome. We've been able to have kids go and mentor under Hi'ile, Auntie Hi'ile over there, Kavelo, the fish pond. I tell her, okay, Hi'ile, I get 3 9-year-olds, 9-year-old girls. Take them. I said, because then I won't hear like, oh, you know, the pool when we call for interns, they're not the same anymore. Their ethic is different. They might be outdoorsy people, but they're not ma'a. They're not ma'a this kind. I said, okay, here, 9-year-old. Kahapeʻa, take some. Here's some more. Here's some boys. And then here's another farmer. And it's actually flourished to be be pretty good. These kids are really competent. I mean, at their age level, our oldest right now is 12, I think, 12 and 13 years old. And we hope that, I said, oh, now you guys too old. Now you guys are going to have to start teaching some of this or be mentors to the 3 and 4-year-olds. So that you are too old, give me your babies, give me your sons, is something that I think all of us practice. And if it's not something new to Hawaii, to our culture, but Mao really pushed that. And when we went down there, we saw a lot of those. Like the keiki coming out, they'd have like their lavas or their malos, and they would be on their little canoes, and the wind's coming, and they didn't have a sail, so they take them off, and they stand on one end, and they're like, and they're going with their canoes, and they're like, wow, look at that. Figured it out, right? Like, that's how it worked. Yeah, so that's my quote.
One of the famous quotes of Mau Piailug that has resonated with me is the one where he says, if I have courage, it is because I have faith in the knowledge of my ancestors. And that is probably one of the most empowering statements you can take in, that you can teach, that you can believe, because for many of us, we're always looking on how we're going to better ourselves. And when we have faith in the knowledge of our ancestors, we can only succeed. Mm-hmm. And sailing with Mau on the open ocean was one of the ways that I got to ikemaka that. And at the same time, I didn't really want to see Mau on the canoe, because if he looked at you, you probably were doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So especially when I was on the steering paddle, I hope he wouldn't peek out of his apartment. Because when he look out, he looks who's steering, right? Because of course he can feel everything. He just knows. He just knows everything. But I also, while out there with Mau, I had absolutely no fear at all. I felt very safe, and I just thought, oh, what an honor to be on the same waʻa as Mau on this journey taking him home. And if he has the faith in the knowledge of his ancestors, he is the perfect example of how that leads to success, like achievement, holomoa, and other things that can build up a kanaka and make them strong in their ohana, in their mo'oku'auhau, in their history, and what a great beacon for our lahui. So if we have faith in the knowledge of our own ancestors, that should be one of the greatest foundational teachings that we can teach our children and even our cousins and our ohana. So shall we all have faith in the knowledge of our ancestors? Mahalo.
Mahalo. That's good. Mina, so you up to you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he had a lot of really funny quotes too. But but the one I'm going to talk about is, when we came home and throughout the voyage, he talked about placing a stick. He said, now I place the stick between Hawaii and Micronesia. Yeah. And it's our opportunity and our responsibility now to walk on the stick. Yeah. It's like the highway through the ocean. And so we created this connection. And he created this connection. And now it's a responsibility of ours to malama. So one of the things about the Emau voyage and taking him home, to give honor to him in front of his own people, like Ānuenue was sharing, was really huge. Because, in Hawaii, we didn't know what was going on in his home at that time. But what we did find out along our way was that he was actually shunned by his community for taking the knowledge outside of his island, outside of his ohana. And so us, especially as younger Hawaiians at that time, we had no idea. Here he was revered and was held in high esteem. And we didn't realize that his family and his children were mistreated because of that. And so for us to go there and to walk upon this stick and to show them who we were, that we're just regular people just like them, but we love the ocean and that we loved Mau. And so that was a really huge thing about the trip. And in their islands, they live very traditionally, especially on the outer islands like Satawal, Pulap, and Puluat, where they all dress traditional still. It was just really amazing, I think, for us as young Hawaiians at that time to see a culture that was completely intact. But also knowing that, Mau is an amazing person because he could see into the future with his weather predictions, but also what was going to be happening to his community. And so one of the main reasons or an outcome of the voyage was that it reignited a spark in the people of Micronesia to practice their culture and to relearn their navigational practices, because they were starting to lose their culture too. And so they were relying on motorboats and different ways to get their food instead of doing the traditional navigation. And so when they saw the Hawaiians, especially all the women, which was a whole nother issue for them because they're very male society, which that was fun too, but it really got a spark in them. So because of our voyage in 1999, they started putting navigation courses into their community colleges. And so now they've had a resurgence of that. And I think since then, they've actually graduated several navigators through their traditional systems. And so that was also a part of it. In addition to the stick being placed is, what is our kuleana now as Hawaiians? To not only malama his family, but to malama his people. Because we know there's a lot of Micronesians migrating into Hawaii now. So what are we going to do about that? And what is our responsibility? And how can we support that in Kokua? So for us, one of the projects that I think maybe is a couple, oh, there's a picture right there. 2 years ago, we built this small sailing canoe, Micronesian sailing canoe. The hull came from Kalihi Valley. It's an albizia log, and one of Mau's sons, Seliquipi Placito, was living here for a few years, and we did this project with him where we integrated with Hawaiian youth and Micronesian youth and the Micronesian community to put this canoe together. And it was really awesome to see that come. And the Micronesian community is so hungry to be active, but they're just kind of stuck in this really funky spot. So that's just one of the small things we've been able to do so far to walk on the stick.
I have too many thoughts going in my head at the moment. Stay together and practice your culture. That's my quote, I remember. Stay together and practice your culture. It sounds very, very simple, but sometimes it's kind of hard to do. So when we went to Satawal, my memories is just everything so in Mau's space on the island, very maiau, very super neat, super clean, very ma'e. And so that's one of my takeaways. Also being there it was almost like going back in time. If we could picture what Hawaii might have, kind of how they functioned a little bit, they still had the halau waʻa on the shore. They had their tribes or their ali'i, their version of each like moku or ahupua'a would be for Hawaii, but of course they're one flat island. But they had a canoe house for each section of the island, and it was just all intact. So to go there was like going back in time and to dream about what it might have looked like here, as far as how they functioned, and how they took care of each other and how they resourced everything. But the funny thing, she talked about a little bit, which made me think of another story. The men there are of the ocean and the women are of the land. So when we arrived, us as women especially was very different experience than our men crew members, because they don't have women that sail in their islands. Only the men go to the ocean, only the men do the fishing, and the women work super, super hard. They do super hard labor on the land. They do everything on the land, basically. The men just go to the ocean, come back, and then drink faluba. Not equitable. So we arrive like, we can do whatever the men can do, right? Like, that's our mindset. Like, whatever the guys do, we do. There's no guy's job and girl's job. We do it all. So it was humbling to see the women. We sat in the men's house while we watched all of the women looking at us from outside. But also in preparation to the island, we had mentally prepared ourselves to go topless, because we knew that they're still intact. So the men, they're wearing the clothes that they wear, and the women don't wear tops unless they're working like in the taro fields and they have t-shirts, but pretty much they don't have tops. So we knew that we were going to enter their environment, and we wanted to make sure that we honor their place and do as they do as wahine. And so we had kind of readied ourselves mentally. Okay, we're going to go topless. When we get there, we're going to take it off. So, we're going to have funky tans, and all of our bathing suit tans is going to look really bad, but we're ready to do it. Let's do this. But the stay together and practice your culture, Mao told us, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to be who we are. We don't do that. We don't do that here at home. And we're not going to be someone that we're not. So stay together and practice your culture, for me, was we're going to be who we are. And we are women who sail. And we wear bathing suits. And so we didn't have to take it off, but that was like a different take on the stay together and practice your culture. So don't have to be somebody else, even though we were ready to honor them in a certain light. And we were kind of curious to see how their women perceived us. Would they be mad at us? Like, what are those women doing in the men's house? And they were not that at all. They were loving and super kind and very friendly, and we were actually worried that we might cause a revolution and change the women's mindsets there and influence them maybe in a negative way that might change the way they were currently living at the time. But yeah, stay together and practice your culture. You have what? Pass.
Anybody have questions? Okay. On Makalii, the triangle? Oh, that's a good. Yeah, ooh. I gotta double check, but I know like there's one triangle that sits outside, and that triangle is for Mao. I do remember that. Sorry. And you know what's a bummer about that is they just repainted Makalii and they changed it. So you see what happens when we forget the story? Now that's lost. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ask my captain and I'll have an answer for you next time. Because if we forget those kinds of things, then now the new generation won't even know it was there. Yeah. So mahalo for asking that, and I'm really sorry I don't have a good answer for you. Any other questions?
I'd like to know, in your process of learning with Mao, prior to the actual learning, did you have to do any cultural, ritual, prayers, anything? Like here before we start with hula. Did you have to do anything?
Well, Makalii is a very spiritual kind of waʻa and ohana. And so pule is happening all the time and often by the crew, by the land crew. I don't recall Mao teaching us any of his prayers, but I know he did them when it was the right time. But for all of us, in all of the waʻa leadership, pule is essential. And so from departures, arrivals, and of course eating, everybody participated and always encouraged because everybody need the help. So yeah, pule was essential.
I guess just to add to that, we were taught to serve him. So anytime there was meals being served, we were responsible to prepare his meal, and then at the end to take his food away and to take care of that. So I think that's something that we learned from Clay Bertelman, who was our head captain, and we just followed what he did. So when we saw him serving Mao, then we followed the same, and then we learned to do that for all the kupuna that were there, that ever came to the canoes. We were always in service. And so I think maybe that's kind of what you're getting at, is that you be in service to them because you want to be in that position of being able to receive. And for Mao, he was very quiet. So he didn't come up to you and say like, oh, I want to teach you some navigation now. Let's go look at some stars. Never. You had to ask. You had to ask him. And when you did ask, it was always freely given. And then they always said, never ask him the same question twice. Because if you forgot what he taught you the first time, he's not going to be happy. Yeah, so you got to be very careful what you ask, because be ready for the answer. Then you have to ho'opa'ana'au, because you cannot ask him the same question again. But he was very loving and very easy to get along with, and he loved to teach. He loved to share. But you had to go and get it. It wasn't something that he would say, okay, we're going to have class now. Everybody come sit down. But if you asked him, oh, Mao, can you go over the star compass with us? Then he would do it. Same thing on the canoe. If you wanted to ask him a question, you just go ask. So some people can sail with him thousands of miles, never ask one question, never learn one thing. But if you stay close to him and you watch, a lot of it was observation, just watching how he is on the canoe, how he behave, how he drink water, how he sleeps, or not really sleeps, because he always knows what's going on. Yeah, that was the biggest learning for me personally, was just observation of how he behaves and how he acted in the natural environment.
Actually, that is like old Hawaii. You never said you watched and listened.
One right behind you, Vince.
How were you involved with the Hokulea and impact you? How did it impact you, or how do you think it impacted Hawaii?
Hokulea? This recent voyage?
Yes.
Oh, so much. Oh, yeah, I was on leg 2. And Sam too. Sam Kapoi, one of your natives over here, is on many legs. I was fortunate to be on leg 2, so long time ago, like 3 years ago. Actually, 3 years ago, like right now, I did Cook Islands to Samoa, and it was an awesome trip. The Worldwide Voyage had a very different mission, that was to share and to go around the world, and to kind of spur interest and spark and inspire in young people about caring for our earth. I think now that the canoe is home, and now that she's going to go around to all the islands again and re-inspire our own people, is really important. What I've seen just actually in the last couple of weeks has been really awesome, that communities are now starting to activate around the energy that's come back from the canoe.
I'm really curious about how Mao drank water. He shared with us.
Yeah, very slowly.
Malama your resources.
Yeah, malama your resources. Yeah.
Patience. I mean, that's what I learned from watching him. And actually, I do that still.
You know, so when we went on, I mean, I'm not sure how it is now too, because there's so much technology on this last voyage too, right, that I know on Hokulea. But we were only given like a little, what was it, liter? No, more, 4 liters.
A liter and a half. You know the big menehune
The
water,
big
the liter and a
igloos?
half? Is that liter and a half?
So we had that for 2 days.
Three.
The water jug
two and
had
a
to
half.
last 2 days.
And that was your personal water. That's all the water you could drink. So you had to choose if you was going to brush your teeth with that or you're going to use, you know, something else. And that's a huge one because I find myself not drinking enough water on land because I have a tendency to sustain myself. I drink water like that. I can keep going. It's not healthy, but it's how your body, and even on the canoe, your body is constantly moving, you know, and so there's things happening. And I remember at that time, we didn't have the healthiest foods, but like little things, you know, would be whenever there's water, if you're gonna have cocoa, drink the hot cocoa, or drink the tea at night, because we only could fill up our water that often. And that was a big struggle for many, like our men, because I know the men take in a lot of water and they're constantly, they burn off a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the new one. So, yeah, that's the new
No, that's the
No, that's the old one. So the triangle outside, that's the one she said
Yeah.
it's, the outside triangle is Mao, but she gotta figure.
We don't know. I'll find out. But yeah, water. They're learning. Oh.
Have you guys ever gone to any other wa'as?
There's lots.
Some.
You should talk about what you doing.
Let's see. I've been on Hoku, been a little bit on Hikianalia, Hawaii Loa, and then I've sailed on a bunch of other stuff too. But
Tematau.
oh yeah, in Tematau we had a short little run to Kauai. Any canoe I can get on, I'm going. Yeah, you know, because you can learn from everything. Yeah, even other sailboats, sail vessels, you can learn so much. So when all of this was happening and EMAO and everything, I just put myself into situations where I could get on anything and really learn from anyone too, to try and build the knowledge base. And so today I run a nonprofit called Kanehuna Moku Voyaging Academy, and we have a 29-foot double hull sailing canoe on the windward side in Kaneohe Bay. And so when we came home from the voyage, you know, we were all in our 20s, and so, you know, you have this thing where you have to quit your job in order to be a voyager. Because back then, no one would pay you to be a voyager. So we had to quit our jobs and, you know, move back home and do those things. We were fortunate that we could. And so when we came home, all our parents looking at us like, well, what you gonna do now? I'm like, I don't know. And it takes a while to transition back. Let me talk about that a little bit. When you come home from voyage, something that profound and impactful on your life. And remember now, 1999, no more cell phone, no more text, no more email. Well, I guess had a little bit email, but no one really did it a lot. So we were like very isolated. I mean, we didn't hear anything except our own voices for days, for weeks. And so to come back and then be put, you know, we came back on an airplane and we landed in Honolulu and we're like, oh, we just want to run away. And so we did. We ran to Ānuenue Coast, I think, for a couple days. Because it's a major culture shock. And then the thing is that you have this profound experience, you're totally changed forever, and no one gets you. And then your parents go, what did you do? What did you do? How was it? I don't even want to talk to you. You're not going to get them anyway, right? So you go through all of these things, right? And then, anyway, it's a huge transition. What I've noticed now in more recent transition, because I'm a mom, and as soon as I land, I've got to get back onto it and work, and then, you know, and text. You know, there's so much outside influence now. It's really hard to do that transition, yeah. So I forget what the original question was, but anyway, right?
Other canoes.
Oh, other canoes. So yes. So Kanehuna Moku, yeah. So when we left Mao in Saipan before we flew home, we said, okay, now what? And he said, you go home and you teach what you learn. You share what you've learned. And so when we came home, charter schools was just the talk of the town. And I was approached by Keola Nakanishi, who started Halau Kumana Charter School. And he said, hey, I heard from your friend Mahina, that you might be interested, but I got one grant and we want to build a canoe and make curriculum and take these kids out. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And so I called Clay Bertelman and I said, Cap, what do you think? And he said, yep, you go do that. So that's what I'm doing.
Very well, too. Very well.
Me? Yeah. So we had to quit our jobs. We got on Kauai High. Actually, before we left for Kauai High, all of us moved to Big Island right after Christmas. And we lived in Mahukona together because that's what was said. You guys can prepare for this voyage. We need you to come early. You got to get the canoe ready and you have to study. And so we all left right after Christmas and we didn't depart till February 10th. So we were all together, and others too, and we all lived together. And so we prepared then. Then when we left, we were all on different legs. For myself, I was on the first leg with Faye Paishan. And that was 21 days to Majuro. And then in between there, we had a lot of hopping. And so people flew in and out throughout the different legs. Total was about 3.5 months we were gone.
Yeah. So, when did you come down?
Leg 4.
Leah, Ānuenue, Kahapeʻa, and myself got to do from beginning to the end. But she was on the canoe pretty much the whole time. But Ānuenue and I got to go on the canoe, on the escort boat, on the canoe, and the escort boat. And Kainani came in somewhere in the middle till the end. Another quote of Mao's was "break the floor."
We have a picture of
Break
him
the
dancing.
floor. Does he have a
Break
picture?
the floor. He loved to dance, and there's a picture of that.
So everywhere we went, there was always some kind of gathering and music and sharing, and dancing was always a part of it. So we break the floor means dance 'em hard. Break the floor. So when we came home, share what we know. My journey during this whole time was I was right in the middle of training for hula. And like literally in the middle, I had started making my pahu and wasn't finished. And I literally told my kumu, I gotta go. I gotta leave. I was, again, quit job. We quit our jobs. We chose to quit our jobs because we didn't have in our mind at that time, we could take a leave of absence. Like, that didn't even occur to me. It didn't cross my mind at all. So it wasn't that we had to quit our job. That didn't have any other option at that time that occurred to me. So quitting the job was the only one because all we knew was we're gonna go, we're going. And that's all we knew, and we were totally in the realm of learning and absorbing and just living all the canoe stuff. But so on the whole way down on the escort boat, the captain of the escort boat actually let me write with a Sharpie on the top of the boat. Like, we literally wrote on. We had to learn chant and all the stuff that we were learning as a crew, because when we got to land, our captain of the escort boat was 2 haole guys from Maui. They were all in though, because they knew when we got to land, they're gonna learn and they're gonna be right in. We did all of our aiha'a and whatever we had to do, we're stay together, practice your culture. That was like constant. But during that time also, I left in the middle of my hula training. She would make her dance for me so I could practice my pa'i, because I was training to eventually I did finish. I did go home in Uniki in that same year. So we did the voyage from February to May, and then I finished my drum and finished my training in the summer, and I did get to Uniki in August. So I became kumuhula in August. And then in 2002, yesterday was our halau birthday. We just turned 15. So I opened halau. And that was part of Mao's influence too, though. Stay together, practice your culture. And he only had one thing that he asked of us, was to share what we know, share what we learn, and continue to pass it on. And I did my dissertation, and I titled it Daughters of Mao. And I really wanted to look at the influence that he had and the voyage had in the learning process. We're all educators in some form here. So in education, that transference of knowledge, how that happens, like how you said, is very old school, right? You're face to face, and the way the knowledge gets transferred is because you're in each other's presence. And it's not necessarily always about reading and writing and book learning, but it's the way things gets transferred, and it's cyclical. So you watch, you observe your teacher, whoever that may be. As a student, you absorb it, you remember it, and then you start doing it and practicing it, and then at some point, that student becomes the teacher, because once you pass it on, then it flips, and that student now is the teacher, and the cycle continues. So to say how much the voyage and Mao has influenced my life is pretty much daily. So, break the floor.
Break the floor.
Came out, we danced. So I like to dance, so I break the floor every week.
Being, sailing along the Micronesian islands, and at every major port having a big celebration, big hoopla, big welcoming. And it was really awesome to see his people celebrating Mao. We had our own way that we could participate in his honoring on the canoe, in the sailing. But to participate and see him honored, and how he really appreciated being acknowledged. And then he had all these young ladies, these young Hawaiian girls around him. Like, yeah, we was breaking the floor with him. But that was one of my most vivid memories, because it was very vivid. Lots of lei, lots of music, lots of dancing. The elders all came out, the children. I mean, it was really spectacular to be a part of it, and it was all about Mao. And, I think the people looked at us like, what? These are Hawaiians? Because not many of them have ever seen a Hawaiian person. And so it was really enjoyable to go along that ride of every major port we landed in. There was the government and the communities really made a big hurrah for Mao. And to see him being appreciated and loved and celebrated for that whole 3-month period, that was really awesome that we could be a part of it and kind of enhance the celebration, because there was a lot of musical exchanges, lots of speech making, and lots of eating. We got to eat some of the Navigator food. We had the mea'ai o ka'aina. We ate what they ate. And I know it was an honor for them to feed us, but it was also an honor to be fed by them, to be in such high rankings, and to celebrate with him this journey home, and to, just like, yeah, Papa Mao, I'm so happy for you. Like, your people love you, they're celebrating you, and we'll break the floor at any time. It was important. All the work, all the silence, all the learning was important, but he really did enjoy the time to celebrate as well. Yeah. So, break the floor.
We used to do Iku Mau Mau. That was one of our chants, and I think a reporter asked him, "So Mao, what does that chant mean?" He goes, "Everybody loves Mao." Iku Mau. Right? I mean, hey. And that was him. Everybody loved Mao. And we're really fortunate because we were there with him. And
That's what it meant over there.
Everybody loves Mao. So next time you chant that, you think of Mao. And because we were the younger ones on the canoe too, we had big kuleana to make sure he always had what he wanted, and one of his favorite snacks. Like we would, we had to stock the canoe with snacks, but before we left, there was this like big jug that was shaped like a bear, and in it had animal crackers, and that was his favorite. Like, I think we went to look for it one time and we couldn't find it because I think he put it in his little apartment, his little hole, and it was in there. And then we had to ask him, Mom, do you want anything? I'll take some more animal crackers. Do you know the animal crackers? And so that's, even little things like that. He was so funny. Like those little things he would say, animal crackers. And then sometimes you're not sure if he remembers your name. And then out of the blue, like, Leon! Yes, Mom, yes. I need, and then he was fun like that. So another quote is make happy. He loved to make happy. So breaking the floor was one way, and even doing other things like having a drink or so, we were able to try out their little concoction called the faluba or tuba. I don't even remember how it's made, but it's from the fermented coconut, the sap. And we all had to try it, right? Because you want to try it. We had to. No, but this is it. This is what it was like. So we show up, and as Kēhau said, we had special privileges on the island because he made sure he wanted to watch us, and we stayed together. So yeah, we were the only ones allowed in the men's house. And all the men, after work, pauhana time, they come with their little containers. Some were gas containers, some were like, I don't know what they were, with their Vienna sausage cans, and they're pouring you this stuff, and they're like, it tasted like, I don't know, vinegar. It was really, yeah. But, yes, I saw some people who I thought never used to, in our eyes, used to not get drunk, or they were like holding the coconut tree after. Oh, yeah. Are you okay? I'm okay. But, Mao was fun. We had so much fun with him, and he made sure that he always had an eye on us. He kept tabs on where we all were, and that was the thing. We were always safe because we were under him. Yeah. So I don't know. Want to share mele? Your mele? You want me to talk? Okay.
I'd like to know, when you're on the ocean sailing, what's your feelings? What are you feeling? Of course you're busy working, but there are times when you're sitting and looking out to sea. What do you feel? Do you feel it? I'd like you to share. You gotta feel something.
I think one of the greatest things about being on the wa'a is that you have a routine. The sun rises in the morning, the sun sets every day, and we take that for granted, because we're so busy on land. And that's one of the rituals that you take. And we have watches. So we have portions where you're on watch, and that's when you work. And that's your kuleana. You're working, steering, you're taking care of whatever needs to be done on the canoe. We love to clean the canoe. We scrub and make sure she's all good, because that's our home, that's our house, that's our island. And then when you're off, you also have a certain regimen. Part of it is you have to make sure you go and shower. You do all those things. You make yourself your bed home. And often they'll tell you, go sleep. Just go to sleep, right? Make sure you sleep so you're ready. But it's so peaceful, and you have a lot of time to think, but then again, you have a lot of time to absorb what's happening around you. And I think that just watching the sunrise, the stars are very important, but the sun coming up in the morning and going down every day is probably the most spiritual time. Like, time stops. There's this period, that like my kumu just shared about ano kakahiaka and ano ahiahi. It's that time where it's dark, but the light's just coming up, or the light's just going down. It's still light enough for your eyes to see and be comfortable, and then it goes to po. It's very spiritual, I thought, and you train for it. So every, like you shared, what did Mao prepare us for? we used to go out to Pololu because we were out in Mahukona. So that was one of our morning rituals, was we had to wake up early before the sun came up, and we had to drive all the way to Pololu to look at the weather. And sometimes, you know, we'd all be there, we all huddle up, and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes the clouds are there, and he'd look. And the majority of the time, he'd just look around, and we'd be there for maybe an hour, 2 hours, depending on it. He'd turn around and just go back in the truck, and we'd be like, what happened? Okay, we're going, jump, hurry up, the truck's turning on, like, they're ready to go, you know, and it's that observation of, what did he see? And then if you didn't ask, then you wouldn't know. But then after a while, you figure out the pattern. Yeah, what is he looking for? And then he'd come and say, yeah, we're not leaving, not for another week, maybe not for another, you know, maybe 2 days or so. And you get used to understanding, like, the cloud color, or the wind, what that cloud looks like and what it's bringing behind it. Yeah, not necessarily for this day alone. So, yeah.
Part of the training for the Emau voyage was to ho'oponopono at home. Any, you know, work stuff, ohana stuff, pilikia stuff. It was really important and required that you leave all your things at home. And so I remember making sure I, you know, called my grandparents, called my ohana, and ho'oponopono. Like, I'm remembering now that I lost my auntie when we were on the trip. And she was my kua'ana. And I was just so thankful that we had that. We had to ho'oponopono before we left. Because had I not, I think the voyage wouldn't have been as awesome for me. And I remember, of course, no cell phone, no social media. I remember we were out at sea, we were docked way out. And then one of the little zodiacs came out, it's like, looking for Kainani, looking for Kainani. I went, why, what? And then Uncle Shirley said, you have a phone call at the hotel. And I just said, oh my God, nobody's gonna call me with something not important. And so, my mom's baby sister passed away, and I just remember how important that step to leave on the voyage, that whatever you had to ho'oponopono in your ohana and on land, that was really important, a really important step or protocol, the process to be able to fully engage in the voyage. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a long voyage, but I guess you can do that on the daily as well. But I remember feeling so thankful, like, I'm so glad we closed up and she wished me a good voyage. So, yeah, mahalo.
Yeah, those kinds of trainings, is stuff that we carry with us to today and stuff that we pass down to our students. So when we prepare for a voyage, we always talk about that. You know, make sure things at home are good. If things aren't good, you know, you gotta go talk story and make sure. So when you're, and one of the things is, so like if you have a situation like Kainani had to experience firsthand, is that then you can keep going. You don't have to stop because you've already malamad that. Yeah, because even us, we're like, you gotta fly home, T. Like, what's gonna happen? And her ohana told her, no, you keep going because everything here is okay. But had she not done that, it might have been a different outcome. So those are the things that are really important for voyaging, because when you get on the canoe, you have to commit yourself fully to the voyage. You cannot have your mind worrying about who's paying the bills at home, or, did I turn off the light? Did I turn the stove off? You know, the kind of things we do on the daily. When you're on the voyage, you have to fully commit, and that's what Mao and Uncle Clay Cap taught us, was that you have to be able to commit. And when you go on the canoe becomes your mother. Yeah, the canoe becomes your mother. and the navigator becomes your father. So you have your family when you're on the wa'a, yeah? And so, you know, nowadays, a lot of people refer to Mau as Papa Mau, yeah? And there's even a movie called Papa Mau. But that started with our Makalii ohana. I can almost remember being in the Mahukona house, sitting with him on that table, and Clay Bertelman calling him Papa. And we all was like, because before, when we first met him, we just called him Mau. We never call him Papa Mau. We learned to call him Mau. And Clay Bertelman started to call him Papa, and that was probably 1998. And so as we journeyed and he became our father on the ocean, it was then that we started to refer to him as Papa. And on the voyage, you know, like everyone was explaining, we were all these young ladies, you know, in waiting around him. We served him, so we were right on his tails all the time. If he needed anything, we were right there to do it. I mean, it was almost like, hey, I'm gonna do that. You know, get out of the way, I got it, you know. I'll get him this, I'll get him that, because you wanted to be close to him. And if you could be in that position of service, then you were very close to him. And so that's how we started this bond. And so the Daughters of Mau, really, it's not a title we gave ourselves. We would never do that. During the voyage, started calling us his daughters. And so that's where that came from. And then we would call him Mr. Father. He said, I am your Mr. Father. And we're like, oh, yes! We were like so stoked, right? Like, I am your Mr. Father. And he really became our papa. He really became our father and a grandfather figure in all of our lives, and continues today to be that important role for us. So that's where Daughters of Mau comes from. And Papa Mau. Any other questions? Oh yeah, he had, oh. Okay. That's a really good question. So now that Hokulea is home, I would say that's a good resource. If you're on Oahu, Kanehuna Moku Voyaging Academy, we work with young people, actually people of all ages. You can come to us as like a classroom visit or a field trip. And then we also have our Halau Holomoana program, which the application is currently open till September 15th. It's for high school juniors and seniors. And we connect all of this awesome voyaging culture and the perpetuation of Mau's legacy, and we connect it to college and career pathways in the maritime industry. So we're trying to get our young people interested in taking on careers in the maritime. One, because that's what our people are good at. Two, because it's a growing industry. And three, you can make good money. Yeah, and you only have to work 6 months a year, so that's really good. Eala's out here with Sam Kapoi, out here in your backyard down at Wai'anae Boat Ramp. How can they get involved with you guys? Okay, go talk to that handsome guy afterwards. And then on all the other islands too, almost every major island now has its canoe. And then we can talk story after too. Yeah. Auntie?
You four are here giving us this talk. Were there other women too? And when you went on these cruises, how many people were on there? And the men and the women.
There's lots of women on Makalii. We're just a small representation. Makalii is probably known for women crew members, I think. I think we have more women than men sometimes. But on the canoe, usually we have about 12 people on board at a time, depending on the distance. But I'm not sure how many women we have, but we have lots of women.
Yeah, there's a bunch more of our cohort, our gang, that are just all in different places. And then we had one wahine from Hana Maui, Auntie Kainani Kahaunaele, and she was kind of like our makua on the voyage, and she was someone we look up to very much. Oh yeah, Elu. Wait, what is it?
How many daughters?
How many daughters?
At least like a dozen, right?
There was like about There's about 5 or 6 other, maybe almost like 10 more of our gangs.
Maybe about
Yeah.
a dozen or so.
We also had 2 kupuna wahine on the voyage as well, so it wasn't just the young ones.
Yeah.
We had 2 grandmas who sailed as well. And so, Auntie Kainani Kahaunaele from Hana and Patty Ann Solomon from Kohala. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kohala.
How did Mo initially feel when you guys had interest in voyaging, being that the Micronesian culture doesn't really have women on the ocean?
So the first navigator was a female because the female is the teacher. So you gotta have a teacher in order to create it. So he has a story about the plover, the Hokulea being the navigator. That's who came to the islands to teach navigation the first time. Of course, it's a migratory bird, so the story makes complete sense, right? But he also told us that it was okay for us because of where we are in our culture, in Hawaiian culture, of needing, cannot just be kane or wahine anymore. We all have to do everything in order to keep our culture going. So yeah, that was his kind of take on it. But for the babies, when they're in the womb, the mother's the first teacher, and the mothers are already singing the navigational songs to the babies before they're born. And then the mothers are the teacher up until they move into the men's house. So he made that connection for us very clear that it was okay for Hawaiian women to learn. Any other questions?
Have they ever given back to Satawal? And do you know what's happening there? Like, what are the changes?
We haven't. The canoes went Maisu. So actually, one outcome of our voyage. So we're anchored outside of Satawal, and because we got in after just at sunset. So they said, okay, you cannot come to shore until the morning. So we're like, okay. So the canoes. So we're anchored. Our escort boat's anchored, and that. With the military ship, yeah. Anyway, we're all anchored offshore of Satawal. So we can't really see the island, but we can see a little bit. And we hear the women singing all night. So we asked Cesario them, oh, what are they singing? You know, and they're singing that they want the canoe. And we're like, what? No, they cannot have our canoe. They were singing that they wanted Makalii. They wanted to have it. So one of the outcomes of the voyage was Clay Bertelmann's commitment to build Maua canoe. He was getting on in his years, and for them, the canoe is their survival because the island of Satawal is not big enough to sustain its people on the fish protein. So they have to voyage 80 miles away to West Fayou to catch turtle and fish, enough for the island to eat. And so so what Mao wanted to do was be able to provision his family and the island, so he needed a bigger canoe. Because the Micronesian canoes are about 24 feet long. They're pretty small. So that was the request was made in 1999. And then in 2007, the canoe was built. Clay passed away in 2004. But his commitment was followed through by the Makalii and the ohana waʻa. And so in 2007, the canoe Maisu, Alengano Maisu, was launched and sailed, and then Hokulea went as well, and to that one, which was called Kuholo Mau Voyage, and they delivered the canoe to Satawal for Mau. And his son Cesario is the captain of that, a navigator of that canoe. It's based mostly in Yap and Palau, but it's connected with the community college system, and so they're training navigators. Hile, help us.
Phone a friend.
Lifeline.
I'm thinking of the fish pond. I'm looking right at you. Like, we know the water's higher. Land crew.
King tides. Give it a mic. I don't know. I mean, we haven't been there for 18 years, but I think through just general knowledge and hearing, Micronesia and a lot of the Pacific, those are going to be the first ones to go under. I know Majuro already has a complete washout on the high tide over their road, because there's one place where you can look two sides and it's ocean, and so that completely washes out now on the high tide. So it's a real issue, and I think that was one of the goals of Malama Honua voyage of Hokulea, was to bring awareness globally to the plight of Pacific peoples and of peoples around the world, and the delicateness of our earth. Mm-hmm. So those are all real things.
Yeah, I think, so another phrase we often hear is he waʻa, he moku, he waʻa. We hear that a lot now. And that really came from our captain, Clay Bertelman. That was his phrase. And he would always say, think canoe. Wherever you went, you think canoe. And so even when we came home, like how we've been sharing, Mao always said you have to continue to teach. And one of it was, when you get off the canoe, your voyage is not done. Your voyage actually has just begun, because now your island that you live on becomes your canoe. And so for a few of us, and including, Hi'ile was a part of this, when we first came home, being lost and not sure what to do, so myself and Mahina, Paishan, we were introduced, actually prior to even the voyage, we were volunteering at a fish pond, at He'eia Fish Pond. And I grew up in Kaneohe my entire life, and I didn't go down there until after I graduated from high school. And it was this really spooky road, because I didn't know, we went, and it was, again, from Mahina. She wanted to go and check. And this is in that time when she had to come back to Oahu. She needed something that was going to help her to connect back to Makalii. And so I was the driver, because I drove one car, and she needed a ride. And we went, and, it was kind of weird at that time. We would go down this steep driveway. How many of you guys have been to Paepaeohe'ei? It's a steep driveway, but at that time it was pitch black because there was all this mangrove forest. And it was just like, where are we going? And there was this big mango tree and this Quonset hut, and it was a little spooky, at night. And then we met, at that time the caretaker was Mary Brooks, and she was a modern day aquaculturist, and she was able to, she was a haole lady from the continent and had all this ike. And part of it too was she was able to see the brilliance of our kupuna, because she said, like the makaha and all of these things, she goes, your kupuna knew it. Like all the modern things we add to, with the pumps and all that, it's here. Anyway, so that became our waʻa. And hi'ile, we have keli'i kotu bete, we even had lihau hanes, and Kala and Kawaiho were a part, and Kanekoa Schultz were a part of that first group, and that became our canoe. And to speak to the changes, so that was 2000, that was 99, and if you go there now, it didn't look like what it looked like when we went there. It was a mangrove forest. You're stuck in mud. I mean, up to, for me, I short, but it was very high, and you smelled like stinky mud, and I remember, I think even Pumehana used to, there's a bunch of people in here that have all contributed to that. And now we have the mahalo to the leadership of Hi'ile and the Pai Pai gang there now. We have mangrove still, but not like how we had it then. And we have a wall that we're building and repairing. And those of you who may have come to Panikapuka, that was the biggest, that was the thing that was like it was kind of like the tumor in the body, right? Like you had to fix that. And now that it's fixed, if you go down there now, even my eyes cannot believe. It's so beautiful. And that was the dream, was to have fish come back into the fish pond, because had fish, but we couldn't see them. And it wasn't an environment that would allow it to flourish. But now we're dealing with the tide rising, so we have king tides. We're dealing with different kinds of stuff like massive debris coming up to shore. So indeed, and there's changes, and I do think of that. I think of what Satawal and all those islands must be like now, because if we're experiencing it here, and we're islands and they're atolls, I can only imagine what it is. And I was just sharing this on our way over that my TA that I have at Kamehameha, she's from Chuuk, and she's brand new. She just started this year. And I asked her, oh, where from Chuuk are you? She goes, I'm from a little atoll outside of the main island that you were at. Because I said, I've been there. She goes, and you know what? She goes, my atoll is a mile long. And she goes, and half of it is residential where we all live, and the other half is all taro fields. And the reason they don't all live there is because of that. There's not enough space for all of them. The tide, you know, so they still have family there, her family, her father's there, but they've outgrown it. Like population-wise, they can't all live there. But the women own the land, so she was sharing, so we own, so my daughter will be the one to own the parcels of ag, and she said, ag and residential. It's so funny the way she, like, ag and residential, oh, how sweet. But they're the ones in charge of taking care of that. And so, you know, when we talk about what's our kuleana, like, we have so many Micronesians in Hawaii now. We're not different. There's so many similarities, and, you know, that, I think, that was my biggest, like, takeaway when I met her this couple weeks ago. She goes, we actually pound taro too, just like you. She goes, and it's unique. We're not like every other island. She goes, and for us, if we don't know it by 3 years old, and only the women do it, it's kind of, you're kind of like a laugh of the town. She goes, so I have to practice. And I said, well, it must have been meant to be. You came to my classroom. Here's a board and stone. Thank you. No.
There's we had a documenter on our voyage, but you know, this is in the old days, had the old camera. So if you go to YouTube and you just search Makalii and Emau Voyage, stuff will come up, and there's a bunch of short clips about our trip. And then Malama Honua, yeah, OEV TV, there's gonna be plenty. In fact, right now, tonight they're playing one at 9 o'clock on the TV, yeah, on PBS. So it's happening, the buzz is on, so there'll be lots of stuff coming out.
At this time, I want to share something I created on the sea. This was one of my journal entries. And I wanted to write a mele for the voyage. And after my kuleana was pau and we left Chuuk, I went on the Coast Guard cutter. A bunch of us did, because we didn't want to leave. So we were just, whether we go Coast Guard cutter, airplane, escort boat, until it's done, whatever we needed to jump on to go to the next place, we did. And so this song was written on the Coast Guard cutter. And it was really funny because the Coast Guard cutter, of course, is all the Coast Guard guys, right? And so we just finished our leg of having our watches, our kuleana. And then we have all these gentlemen, they don't want us to do a thing. You know, it's like, oh, I mean, I know we don't have kuleana on the Coast Guard cutter, but we still were in the practice of helping. But they have their own rules, so it had me, Auntie Didi Bertelman, and Milan Pa'alua. And so we had free time. Like, we could just cruise. When time to eat, we eat. We had shower, we had bunks. It was quite luxurious. And I don't know how many times one whole bunch of wahine was on one Coast Guard cutter ship, because that's a very kind of place. So they was on there. Everybody was so nice, and you know. So we said, okay, let's have our snacks and kick back, and you know. So I said, okay. So this song was written because we had some free time to enjoy, and a lot of the snacks we had was trail mix out of a bucket. So when I think of us in the afternoon enjoying trail mix, and I think we had soda, like strawberry soda. It was like, oh my gosh, we can have ice cream out of the things from the ice box. I mean, it was so luxurious, you know. But anyway, this song. I don't know that. I would have rather been with you guys though. But it was nice to be able to create a mele, and as soon as we got to the next port, present it to Mau. Yeah. When we got to Satawal, Kēhau, our kumuhula, created the mele, created the hula, and we were able to perform it for Mau in the men's house on Satawal. So that was one of the wonderful things that I enjoy thinking about, is that, okay, we got something for him, and we're going to add this to our honoring of Mau. And then when we got home, this song went on the Na'u'oi CD, produced by Ahapuna Leo, Emawe. And then it went all into the Punana Leo Ho'omaus and to many Mede programs. You know, so teach what you know, stay together, practice your culture. This is one small way through music that my interaction or our experience can be put out into our community. And when they sing Maue, they can say his name, and then they can hopefully learn about him, because there's a lot more ways to learn about Mau Piailug now than ever before. Yeah, so everybody can access him through the videos, through documentaries, through the stories. But the easiest way is through a song. And so I'd like to sing this song. The words are there and easy to follow along. How would you like to do this, ladies? And the original choreography. It has evolved, depends which Mede program you go. But this was the true to our tradition. This is the choreography for this mele. Yay! Okay, Mary. Take your mic.
Mahalo nui for spending time with us and for allowing us to be here tonight. It was just lovely for us to be able to reminisce and just talk story and interact. So mahalo nui for all of the organizers who invited us, especially. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo, Maria.
One more round of applause for the Daughters of Maui. Yeah, on behalf of our planning team and of course the Kaiāulu o Maili, me Wai'anae, me Nanakuli, keia moku o Wai'anae, nui ko mako mahalo I keia, I ko'oko ai ana e nanea pume mako, ma keia wahi pana. If we can all end by kui luna and then we'll do oli mahalo together. And we can maybe make a circle and join hands. Two circles is fine too. It doesn't have to be one circle. So whoever is nearby you. And we have the words up here too if you need kokua. Please drive safely home. Aloha.